Tango 1 at the top. We are at pop-up vehicle. 10-4, Tango 1. You have control. Tango 1 copy. Stand by. Stand by.
Integrity, passion, resilience. That's what this place was built on. That's what our community is founded on. Don't act like the example, just be the example. This is the home of the greatest fitness community in the world. We're trying to create strong, able bodies, resilient to injury with a gas tank to get shit done. If there's one thing from this podcast, it's about taking immediate action, find the problem, fix the problem. This is your opportunity. It's either a hell yes or a fuck no. It's that simple. You're doing that. The Tango 1 podcast. Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
Everybody, welcome to the Tango 1 podcast. Pumped to be here today as usual. It's a nice Friday. It's snowing outside, and my guest, Phil, Jewell, and I are both going to be shutting her down, I think, after this to enjoy the rest of our day with our families. So Phil is the founder of Impact Leadership Development and Coaching. He served in both the British and Canadian Army, and he graduated from the British Army's Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst, which I was looking up. That's a pretty big accomplishment. Hey, I think he kind of played that one down a little bit. He's also a cyclist, and now a bodybuilder and a water painter. This guy, there's a lot to this guy. So
I'm not a bodybuilder.
Oh, you're a bodybuilder.
No.
This is the gym. A lot of gym people follow this. They're gonna be like looking you up as a bodybuilder, and they're gonna be like, "You're
fake."
This guy's a liar. So Phil and I were talking, man. That Phil is with the bodybuilding thing. We're not joking. You are entering into a competition, right? Coming up soon.
That's right, yeah. I'm not a bodybuilder at all, but I have set a goal that I'm going to enter a men's physique competition end of October, beginning of November, I think, here in Atlantic, Canada. Never done anything like that before. I mean, fitness has always been a key part of my life. Serving in the Army kind of obviously helped ingrain that. But over the last couple of years, COVID, everything, life, I found myself kind of slipping off that fitness train and almost losing myself a little bit. And so a few months ago, I was like, something needs to change here, and I need a goal. And so I was like, I need a goal which is going to be hard. I'm the type of person where if you give me, an attainable goal, I won't necessarily be that motivated to achieve it. If you give me a goal which is really challenging, then I'll, have more chance of actually achieving it. So yeah, I put myself down for this, and a few months in and just loving it. And we were just talking about, the nutrition side of it, and, really looking at the grams I'm putting in my body, and it's, reframing how I see food. It's awesome.
No, and I think this isn't really the episode. I want to talk to you about everything from, a little bit of mental health, leadership, some of your service and stuff. But I think this is a good place to start, because right now we're running a challenge in the gym. We just started this week. It's a 6-week transformation challenge. And it's not a weight loss challenge. We're trying to build habits into people. And you mentioned something the last time we talked about, the discipline that comes with controlling what goes in your body. And I think even I know we don't want to talk politics today, the last thing I want to talk about, but I think even with freedom and some of the things in your own life, we let these little things. So if you forget it, it's happening, the same thing is happening, I think, in this country, but also happens in our own bodies. It's you take, you just get chipped away, and, one bad habit becomes 2 bad habits.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you've kind of what happened in 2 years, like you kind of said, and it's wow,
yeah.
I need to dial it in. So you love that discipline of what you're eating. Are you actually are you counting macros, or are you following a meal plan?
Yeah, no, I'm counting macros, and I love it. And I mean, I've always liked stats. When I think back to school, I actually always enjoyed math and numbers and all that sort of stuff. So I'm loving dialing in and looking at the macros I'm eating every day and trying to hit those numbers. And I've never ever paid attention to it, and it's just been mind-boggling. And just like we said, reframing how you see food as a fuel. And it's interesting. I love the conversation about habits. Actually, the coach I'm working with, actually, she gave me recommended a book, and I've heard this book many times. I'm so glad she gave it for me to read. It's Atomic Habits. I don't know if you read that, Atomic Habits. I think it's James Clear.
James Clear, I believe. Clear.
Yeah, and it's just so great about and it talks about that story you may have heard of the British cycling team, where they looked at 1% improvements, and they just try to improve every little thing, the smallest things, and it actually reaches or leads to sort of long-term gains in the year. And it's like going to the gym like every day, we know this, or going to the gym like, a healthy amount of times a week. You don't see the gains there. You don't see the gains in the week. You don't see the gains in that 2-3 weeks, but over a few months, 6 months, a year, you'll see massive gains. And I think that's the key with those little habits, that 1%. And honestly, if you talk about when I talk about to my time at Sandhurst, as one of the biggest things they taught us was like, self-discipline. Like those small habits actually mean a lot in the long term.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And like, when you turn that to the fitness world, and people have, we're not big into cardio here. Like, we believe cardio is good for your health or good for your heart, right? But the best way, I think, to make changes in your body, and like we talked about it, most people come to the gym because they want to look good, good, feeling good. Yeah. Like, that transcends into how you like. It's bullshit for people to say that the first thing that you're not judged on when you walk in a room is how you look, right? Yeah. How you carry yourself. That is like, that's a rule it was for law enforcement. Yeah. Presence is your first use of force. And it's the same thing in business. It's the same thing when I walk into a crowd of people. Like, so the better you carry yourself, the better you're going to feel. But it's been, with us, I really believe, like, if you just like get on the rower, for example, 1,000 meters a day, it takes like 3 minutes, 4 minutes if you go slow. And all of a sudden you've got 365,000 meters put in. Like that's a significant, like that's what you talk about, that 1% better, like by this little effort, it becomes a massive, man.
It's insane, isn't it? I love that.
Yeah. No, 100%. So you're going to go on the stage, speaking of looking good and feeling good. So yesterday we do jiu-jitsu here, and I just bought a cup. So I hadn't worn a jock strap in so many years, but I thought of you, man. I put this thing on, and I'm like, whoa, Phil's got to go on stage.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I love it. I think I get away with it. I think I'm allowed to wear like board shorts. I don't know what we call them. I actually think I don't have to wear like the tight jock strap. So I'm kind of like covering that. I'm
kind of disappointed by that answer. I
know.
But I suggest the cup. It's good. It's also good for your confidence.
Love it.
So man, let's talk about you some more. Like the calls, the real, like the roots of you. So you got the accent. I know we're talking in Halifax. Where did you grow up? Like, and how did it come about to the military and stuff? Just take me back.
Yeah. So right now I live in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I mean, this is my home now. But I grew up in northeast of England. Kind of Newcastle would be the nearest city, but anyone in England would say I was a liar to say I'm from Newcastle, and they'd be right in saying that. So I grew up in a little village called Whitton-le-Weir. It's kind of outside of a town or city called Durham, and in the northeast of England. So I grew up there, lived there. First 20 years of my life, went to university, joined the army, traveled all around. I'd spent a year traveling and working in Canada, and by happenstance met my wife, Sarah, who's Canadian. I met her in England in my early 20s, and I guess the kind of rest is history. It was time to move back to Canada with her, and we came back here, and this is our home now. Our kids were born here. They really just think I'm just weird to speak with a weird accent. They're Canadian, and so am I. And we made Halifax our home. It's where my wife grew up, and it's we love it here. It's great.
That's amazing. So the military, so how many years did you serve? And I was kind of confused. So you served in both. I know, is it that part of the Commonwealth stuff, or did you actually have to like leave one, join the other?
Yeah. No, I had to leave one and join the other. But it's funny you say confused, because I remember a certain situation. I was in the Middle East, the last operational tour I served in, maybe like 2015. And I was, so obviously I have a pretty strong English accent. I was wearing a Canadian Army uniform, and I was actually attached and working within the US Army. And I was briefing this US general on something pretty important. And, it was a pretty high level brief. And about like 20 seconds into this brief, he just looked at me and just stopped. He goes, "Whoa, hang on a minute, hang on." He says, "You're wearing a Canadian Army uniform, you're speaking with an English accent, and you're working with us in the US Army. Like, what is going on here? Like, you're some sort of spy, you know what I mean?" So I was like, "No, I just got an identity crisis, So I still think I have." So yeah, so it's it's the fact that it's the Commonwealth countries. There was like a reciprocal agreement that basically you could transfer from different armies. It wasn't as easy as like just transferring, but they would recognize your service, your qualifications, and everything. So it was it was pretty seamless, to be honest with you. So I served, in the British Army. I was an officer in the British Army. And then I was married to my wife, Canadian. We always wanted to move back to Canada. And I was actually in Afghanistan. Crazy experience. I was in Helmand province leading a team of soldiers. They said, okay, you're going to go on a different operation. So, got on the helicopters and we flew into this, into Kandahar. And I didn't even know which country I was going to work with. And we had an hour to prep, whatever. And we got on the ground and I realized straight away that everything was the same. Like the terminology we used was the same. The equipment we used was the same. Like everything was the same. I was like, oh my gosh, we're so similar. So I went on this operation, flew back, and I started to inquire. I was like, I wonder if I can transfer to the Canadian Army. And lo and behold, there was a way to do that. In fact, I was married to Canadian Help with my permanent residency. So I basically left. I had to resign. I leave the British Army and kind of join the Canadian Army, but everything transferred. And then I served in the Canadian Army. And then I mentioned I kind of got attached to the US Army, and then really just had a moment where I was like, you know what, this is a great career. I really love it, but I can't be the dad I want to be, and I can't be the husband I want to be while I'm kind of serving in the army. So decided to leave.
Wow, yeah, that's kind of how I felt with policing. I was just like, I loved it, but I think it had run its course, and it was time for me. There's so much of it that I miss. Don't get me wrong, but it was like, I just thought the things I wanted to do, they couldn't probably coexist, right? And then that came from personal, that came from professional, same kind of thing. So when you transferred over, did you have to go? I always wondered, because I at one point to consider it a transfer. Did you have to go back down to being a peon, for lack of a better word?
No,
and I don't think through the whole thing. Did you? Oh man,
no. I don't think my ego wouldn't have survived that.
That's what I wonder. Yeah,
no way. In fact, my ego took some. I had recently been deployed to Helmand province in Afghanistan. Led a team of AAA 40 soldiers with the British Army, etc. And and then I transferred to the Canadian Army, and there were a couple of moments where people were like, "Oh, you need to test the water, get your feet wet before we give you that level of trust." And I was like, "You kidding me?" I was like, more operational experience here than quite a few other folks, but so my ego, even in the slightest moments, was damaged. So if I'd been asked to kind of repeat some things, I wouldn't have done. And maybe that's a bit of a reflection of how sometimes your ego's your enemy, but that's just who I am.
Yeah, but that's self-awareness. I think there was a rule when I got removed from SWAT. It was a 10-year thing. It was just like, hey, 10 years you're on. It didn't matter. I was still one of the youngest guys there.
Yeah,
like you said, my experience was there. I was doing a lot of stuff, and then it said as long as you're gone, the rules technically said if you're gone 2 years or 3 years, whatever it was, you could try back out. And I was still in good enough shape. And I'm like, man, that would be the worst thing I don't know how I would handle it. One, from the ego, but it'd also be terrible for the dynamics of the unit, because how are they not going? It was just, I think I was best to just kind of let it go and cut ties altogether. So a typical operation for you, what was your specialty? Do you have specialties when it comes to military? Broad sense, I was a combat engineer. So I was a leader of combat engineers, and I was a kind of an officer in the Royal Engineers. So honestly, in layman's terms, we blew things up and we built massive Lego sets to help get across different terrain, if you like. So when I think back to my time in Afghanistan, we'd build bridges to cross canal, but bridges in 30 minutes to get across when we were in some pretty intense situations. And we would carry a lot of explosives and do a lot of the breaching or do other aspects. And I'd lead teams who would search the IEDs and all that sort of stuff. So I wasn't a technical expert in any of that area, but I led the kind of teams who did that. Yeah, that's what being a leader is, though, right? You can't be the people who want. I find the worst leaders I've worked with have been around are the ones who try to be the experts rather than it's about empowering your experts. You're the expert in this. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think, and let's make that blend, right?
I love that. I'm a huge believer in in that in fact, some of the best leaders I've ever worked for, and I think when I felt that where I could provide the best leadership was when I've known little to nothing about the technical area I'm leading. And I think we have it completely wrong, and I think we're realizing that. But traditionally, you would promote the best salesperson or the best whatever it is because they were great at that technical area. So okay, so they're going to be a good leader. But leadership, it's this whole different domain. You know what I mean? It's this whole different profession. It requires different skills and different techniques, and we never give any sort of leadership training. and then we throw these people into leadership positions overnight. And what they're forced to do is they're forced to go into their comfort zone, and the comfort zone is to understand the technical area. So they then dig down and micromanage their teams, you know. Whereas when we have a leader who understands little to nothing about the technical area, they can't go into micromanaging. They have to empower and they have to trust. And I completely agree. You know, I think that's totally how I see leadership as well.
Yeah. So did you like? I guess it's so hard there. So I don't know with you. For me, there was no training for the leadership position. There was, but it was so informal. It was like more of a mentorship, more of a watch. You know, I like what this guy does. I don't like what that guy does, which is just as important, I think, when you're looking at leadership and learning leadership. Lots of reading. My father, he was a chief of police. He used to just pass me book after book after book. Leadership was like a thing that I like really like envied captains and team captains and this and that in different sports. But for you, was there formal education in that, or is this just something that kind of drove you to be maybe where you are now?
Great question. And I think, first of all, I want to touch on what you said about like how you developed your own leadership style, because what I was hearing is something I really believe in, is like, you haven't taken a blueprint from anybody else. Like, you've created your own blueprint. Like, you've taken things that resonate with you, as some people do. You've taken aspects from books that resonate with you, and you've thrown things away that don't resonate with you as well. I think that's so key for any leader, is to not emulate anybody but themselves. Like, we can only be ourselves. Like, Phil can only lead who Phil is, and like Tony can only lead how Tony is. But yeah, so in terms of leadership training, I actually was fortunate. Like, the whole, the Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst, the British Army officer training is very different to what we see in North America for officer training, because in North America, it's mixed with education in terms of a university degree. So like, Royal Military College here in Canada, West Point in the US, you go there for 3 or 4 years. I don't know exactly. You get your degree at the same time, interspersed with kind of leadership military training. Whereas Sandhurst is completely different, as in it is just a year of practical leadership training. They don't really care about, your education per se. They just care about training you to be a leader. So it's a little bit of theory and a lot of practice and a lot of failure. So yeah, I was very fortunate actually, to have that year exposure. And we were put in leadership positions there where we were, privileged to lead some, very competent soldiers. Worked a lot with the Gurkha Soldiers, who, I don't know Gurkhas, but kind of some of the elite Nepalese soldiers who work in the British Army, they're the Gurkhas. So there'd be, a team of Gurkhas who, if I was given a leadership assessment, I'd be leading these actual professional soldiers. So yeah, I was very, very fortunate to have a lot of kind of practical exposure to it, if you like, before I was actually, let loose.
Yeah, I know. And the Gurkhas, it's funny. I'm reading a book right now. It's the 14 summits, 14 peaks.
Yeah.
The Gurkha soldier who climbed 14 summits in like some godly amount of time. It's a very cool book, but I never heard of Gurkhas. It's just funny how things come about.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? And I think there's a documentary on Netflix.
Yeah, I've been avoiding it because I want to finish the book first. But that's the same documentary on Netflix. It's interesting.
Yeah,
it's quite a story if you get a chance.
Well, I mean, it's incredible. Yeah, I didn't know there was a book. I actually am going to look that up. I mean, the Gurkhas are incredible. I was fortunate, in fact, my first regiment I served in fact, the regiment I went to Afghanistan with was actually the Gurkha Royal Engineer Regiment. And so half of our soldiers were Gurkhas, and it was just leading those folks is just a different ball game, and it in good and bad ways, and it really talks to leadership in different cultures, and how there's many different aspects with leadership, and you really have to understand and appreciate the cultural environment, if you like.
Right. And then also like we spend so much time, I think, and a couple of white guys who are talking about, like, we spend so much time like trying to be the same. We're trying to make us but there's also like celebrating the differences of everybody around you. And like listening to this guy, the guy who wrote it is a Gurkha, and he's writing this book, and he's talking about just from growing up, where he grew up, his ability to like trek through the mountains is way different than me and you. Like, and like, or you read some of the books about the Afghanistan soldiers, how they move through the mountains. And it's like, like putting people, again, sometimes it is about who you are and where you're from that might make you the best person for that situation. I think we try to soften that too much instead of like celebrate it. Like,
yeah. That's a great point. It's a great point. Yeah. And like, talking about the Gurkhas, and I'm not at all an expert or anything like that, but their level of loyalty and their level of pride to serve, in the British Army in particular, was just absolutely incredible. I've never met a team or people who are as dedicated, as loyal, and as committed. I mean, and the level of just determination and physical ability was incredible. So there were many things where they're amazing at. But I think back to some of my time serving with, when I led the team, and it combined, typical British Army soldier and then a Gurkha soldier. And there were times when you knew who would be better at which tasks, because the one thing with the Gurkhas is they're very, very respectful of authority, very respectful. So I would give them any sort of mission, and they would simply say, "Yes, Saab," and they would just go and do it, even if it was like a completely crazy idea and a crazy mission. Whereas, the typical British soldier would be like, "Can we swear on here, Tony? Am I good to swear?"
Oh, fuck yeah.
They'd be like,
fuck yeah, you could swear.
Yeah, okay. They'd be like, "Are you fucking kidding me, Troopy? There's no fucking way I'm going. That's the shittest idea you've ever had. Okay, go and get another." You know what I mean? So, and which I like, because the worst table to be at is that table when you give any sort of leadership and everyone just says, "Oh yeah, good idea." I'm like, that is a bad table to be at. You need to be challenging my ideas and challenging my thoughts,
Yeah, and having a team of balance too, the people who are going to be like, hey, whoa, everything's no, and then there's some that everything's yes, and somewhere in the middle everybody else falls, which is great. Curious what your opinion on this, and that's been I don't know if it's a popular opinion, especially since we're two people who like to train people to become better leaders. My opinion is you're kind of born with this innate, or maybe it's developed through your youth, that makes you into a good leader. And I believe wholeheartedly that you can always become better through books, leading, coaching, all these things. But I think there's something inside. There's every once in a while, I look at somebody and like, I don't think I can do this with you. You just don't have the backbone or the ability to speak up. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. So it's like the whole nature versus nurture type.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of think the same. I think I'm like, it's both. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's a messy combination of both. But I agree. There's just something in some leaders who we know, and we around us and around environments that just they just have this innate ability to be a leader. And I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? I don't know what the characteristics are of that. But there's obviously, people can work and develop on that. So I don't know. I mean, I look to myself, I was always for some reason drawn to a leadership position or role, whether I liked it or not. I happened to be the captain of the football team. Well, I should say soccer team, but I like
just gonna call
I
you
like
mixed.
I know. So, and I was, captain of the cricket team, which might even sound even more confusing to you. But anyway, so, and then, I remember working in a fast food chain when I was at high school, and I, soon became like a team leader or crew leader, whatever it's called, and it's just, I don't know why. And I didn't necessarily kind of enjoy those leadership positions. I say that I obviously did enjoy them, you know what I mean? Because I was kind of into them, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm the same. And stubbornly, as people who are doing consulting and coaching, you want to you're like, I can work with anybody, right? I can get anybody there. And I don't know, I run these camps with the men, and it's random men from all different walks of life and different, reasons for being there. And I find that within 6 hours, you're like, that guy's got it. Not that the others don't, but that guy really has it. And it's not always the loudest, it's not always the quietest, or the best thinker. It's just this extra trait that people carry both of them kind of stands out. Yeah.
And I love the fact you said it's not always the loudest or whatever it is, because I think we've done a really bad job. Hollywood's done a bad job at kind of putting this image of what a leader is in society. And it's ironic because here we are, we're two white men from a paramilitary background. So we're kind of reinforcing that image, you know what I mean? But it's like, that's not what a leader is, you know what I mean? And I think sometimes for me, now when I look at a room and you can spot the leaders, it's honestly, I find it's those who are self-aware enough and introspective enough to look at themselves, you know what I mean? And to realize that you can only lead others as far as you can lead yourself,
Yes. And that's why this conversation applies to anybody and everybody, whether you're a mother, a father in a relationship. It's not about leading a business or a SWAT team or a military operation. It's about leading yourself. Yeah. Therefore, you're leading. If every single person takes on, that's what we preach here, from me to the newest member of the garage gym. Right from our team down, is everybody here displays the leadership characteristics. Is everything moves faster, smoother, and better, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I truly believe that. I believe like we're all leaders. I really feel like we are all leaders, whether you hold a formal leadership position or you don't hold a formal leadership position. And, like you take somebody who's, stays at home and raises kids. I think they're some of the most important leaders we have in our society. Like they're raising the future of our society, you know what I mean? And yet they typically might not identify themselves as being a leader. And so, I really feel like we all have a responsibility to contribute to a better community. We are all leaders. We can all be part of making it better, or we can be part of making it worse,
Yes. Yeah, that's your choice. And that kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, again, trying to avoid politics, but man, if everybody just swept their own doorstep a little bit right now, like how much better would the world, some Mother Teresa quote or something, sweep your own doorstep, the world would be a better place. And I think there's a lot of us, and we're all guilty of it, myself included, just worrying about things before like my own house is in order. And I think that's what it comes down to. So you said introspective, and I always love to talk to other people who have had, let's call it high risk leadership, because I feel like we've really tested a lot of our own theories. Like when when you go out there and you legitimately give a plan, and if your plan doesn't work, somebody might die. That's a whole other level. And I think that's what we bring when we go talk to businesses and places like that. So I know for me, I think like my biggest failure as a leader when I was on that SWAT team was succession planning. Like I didn't do a good enough job. I kind of like, there was no tenure when I started, and then they put one in, and then it was like, oh shit, like what are we gonna do? We got nobody ready. So like, but in theory, and especially in the jobs that that we did, like something could happen. Like, it could have been as little as me breaking my ankle or as serious as dying, right? But so not having a succession planning enough, not having somebody like giving enough responsibility, give a lot of responsibility in the task, but not enough responsibility in the overall leadership of the unit. And that's something it's all about legacy here now. Like I want every single person to leave it better and to help the next person. So that your role is replaceable, your personality, what you bring to the individual is not, but the role is always replaceable here.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think? Is it that one you need to think on, or?
Maybe
refer through all your notes and mistakes there.
Yeah,
you're like,
exactly. I was like, oh my
we've
gosh,
had so many. We all have.
Which failures do I want to admit? You know what I mean? But I love what you're saying about like whole succession planning, and it's it's ironic. I remember like before I deployed to Afghanistan, like one of the assessments, if you like, or just in general, when I was in the British Army, like how I was assessed, if you like, rated. A lot of it was how well I developed those around me. It wasn't actually on my own performance. And, some of the biggest moments I had in assessments, I wasn't even there. So like there was, some critical moments when we were like literally going through some of our final training and assessments to deploy to Afghanistan. And they come along and say, okay, like Phil, I was a lieutenant, like Lieutenant Jewell, okay, like you're dead now. Like get out there, go and sit under that tree for the next 36 hours. I was like, what? They're like, yeah, go away, go and sit on that tree for the next 36 hours, and then turn around to my whole troop, like, hey, get going, get going. And they basically watched the performance of my troop over the next 36 hours, and they'd basically judge me on the performance of my troop when I wasn't there leading them, because that showed because that demonstrated the environment I'd created over the last 12 months, the empowerment I'd created, how well I'd allowed others to step into my role. And I'm a massive believer in making ourselves so irrelevant. Like I think our job as a leader is to strive to make ourselves so irrelevant that I could leave this moment and no one would even notice. That is what you should strive to do, because the irony of that, because if you leave that mentality, you're then going to empower your folks. They're going to feel confident. You're going to allow them to step up, etc. You want to basically work yourself out of a job. The irony of it is you'll never actually work yourself out of a job. You'll just maybe open doors for yourself to move into different things, you know what I mean? To keep developing yourself. But you'll see those around you thrive in that environment. And I really that's the mindset. That's one of the biggest lessons I think I took from my time in the British Army. And, I remember it so well. I mean, like even when, you've been leading this troop and you're leading these teams and you feel so loyal to them, and you change positions and the next morning there's someone else leading them and they basically, you're nobody to them, like good memories, but hey, we moved on. And that's very humbling, but it's exactly how it should be, to make ourselves irrelevant. But when I think about, my failures, I mean, I have so many failures as a leader. It's I was going to say it's shameful, but, I don't know if it's shameful, because I think we all should look in our failures. And, the biggest the advice that I know we throw around a lot, and I used to give it all the time, is like, sometimes we learn the best by observing the kind of poor leadership behaviors of others. But I actually now think that advice is kind of mediocre at best. In fact, I think advice is actually a load of BS. I think we learn the best when we're actually honest enough and introspective enough to look in the mirror at our own failures and learn from our own mistakes and be able to kind of develop on that. So I think when I look back at what some of my biggest failures, it's actually my own self-awareness and my own kind of emotional awareness. Like I look at some of the emotional intelligence attributes, empathy being one, is like I'm so low and bad on those sort of aspects, you know what I mean? So understanding my own emotions and understanding myself and what's triggering my emotions in the moment, and my lack of understanding has probably led to some of my biggest failures.
Yeah, but you know what? We went from talking about you and your jock strap to getting pretty deep here.
I know.
I think that was fantastic, though, and I love what you said about making yourself irrelevant. They say the test in business, especially small businesses, that you can actually step away, go on vacation, let things happen, and that's a true test. But funny, because it was a client I work with, and she was in this morning. She had this great conversation with me. She's really dialed in her habits over the last year, built a real foundation, and she said last night she had to work late and came home and found that everything, was done. Yeah. Everything, all the habits, like like let's eat, let's get the kids, let's do all these things. Her family got everything done. And I like that. So if Amy, if you're listening, that is a true sign that you're like, you are leading the way. Like you're, you made yourself so you could be irrelevant. You're still wanted. You're still wanted there. You're still loved and cared for, but you're, your role can be replaced, you cannot be what your role can be. Right?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
That's so important. And that's what I really want to be happening here at the gym. We've been striving for that for years. I think we're there, but you never know until the shit hits the fan. And and it has a little bit, and people step up, and that's what you love to see. And I think that's the coolest drill. That kind of sounds like business. Kind of sounds like leaving your business for 3 weeks, just like you having to go watch it on the hill.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great story that you just shared. I think it makes me think of I was thinking about this recently. I was like, I'm a pretty simple person. Like I like to explain things in simple ways. So I was thinking about a Formula One and the mechanics in Formula One. And I was thinking about, the leadership kind of aspect, because I think back to some of when I felt that I created the kind of, when I'm proudest, if you like, in terms of the leadership environments I create. And, it's let's say you think over a 2-year period, the first 6 months were pretty challenging. The second 6 months got a bit better. And then the last year was probably some of the easiest leadership I've ever done, because I was able to just sit back then and really look strategically, look at, down the horizon. Like I wasn't fighting daily fires. I wasn't involved in the operations, etc., because I'd create a leadership environment where I could just step away and it would all continue. And I think of a Formula One and all the mechanics and how during a race, they just sit during a race. A race can go for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they're involved for maybe 60 seconds, literally 60 seconds. And the rest of the time, they're just sitting because they've done all the hard work. They've done all the preparation. They've got the team ready, which is the car. Then it's, and I think about that in leadership analogy as leaders, that's what we should strive to do. We should strive to build up the foundations and everything that it can just work by itself. And now and again we have to come in and put a little bit of oil in, we have to do a tire change, etc. But for the most time we're able to sit back and then look at the the next bound. Okay, where's this business going to be in 5 years? What's going to happen if I leave, etc., etc. And it's interesting you talk about the role can be is replaceable, and I completely agree. Is I always find I'm always nervous, if you like, and this is a complete bias, and it might just be me, but whenever I look at an organization and they have taken that team or that organization has taken on the identity of the leader too much, I think that's dangerous. I think the moment that team or organizations becomes too much like the leader, it's in a dangerous position, because basically to me that says that this team or this organization really would falter if that leader left.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know servant leadership is a popular thing to say, but I truly believe it is an accurate, like what do you want to do here? I want to hire great people and make them better. I want to hire great people and help to make them greater, do whatever I can, input whatever I can, teach, provide, whatever that is to make them better. But also I want to give them a task and let them fucking do it. That's what we do. We hand out tasks here. We don't really hand them out. We put up, okay, what do we need to get done? Who wants it? Boom, I got it. I got it. Okay. And then everybody's like, what do you need from us? What do you need from me? How's that project coming? What do you need from me? It's not like, show me every day. I think that's what people go wrong. Trust in your first instinct that hired that person. Trust in that first instinct that hired that person, and then let them go with it. See how it turns out. Yes, not always to how you want it, but a lot of times better than you planned it.
Yeah, I love that. Just like a couple of things you spoke then, like servant leadership. So it's interesting. And actually, we were talking about my books. So this book here called Serve to Lead. And I know you had Sean Bacon on as a guest recently. He bought this book after I think I showed him. This was given to me my day one in Sandhurst in 2005. And like servant leadership has been the motto of Sandhurst for decades. And I know it's gaining a lot of traction and it gets a lot of kind of, publicity now, but it's been around for a long time. And I'll never forget the first week in my training. And there's one of our instructors lines us up. And this person was a veteran of like known and unknown operations. And here we are as officers or, hopefully become future officers to lead soldiers. And this person lines up and they said, listen, don't you ever forget the only reason you exist as a leader in this organization is potentially to have the privilege of leading soldiers one day. It'll be your absolute privilege if we give you that kind of opportunity. You exist for them. They don't exist for you. And that mindset is something that I have taken in my whole leadership, is like, as a leader, I exist for the team I lead. They don't exist for me. And it's something that I really kind of hold close to my heart. And then kind of leading on to that, you talk about how you give out tasks in the gym, and you talk about trust. And I'm such a believer in giving trust on day one. I think this whole notion that trust is earned is complete and utter BS. I do not believe that trust should be earned at all. Respect should be earned. That's same coin, different side. It's a different thing. Respect should be earned. But trust, if you give trust on day one, 95% of the people will love it. They'll feel empowered. They'll reach up to the level you're holding them capable to do, etc. We've all been there where we feel trusted and how much, oh, wow, like you want to stand up to plate. The problem is we're so scared to do it because 5% of people will take advantage of that and they'll let us down. Absolutely, they will, 100%. But the uniqueness, the creativity, the innovation, the power of the 95%, if we trust them on day one, will outweigh those risks of the 5%. I'm such a believer in that.
It applies everywhere, man. It applies everywhere. You've talked about being well-traveled. My wife and I backpacked a lot of South America, and people are like, what are you crazy going to Colombia? Are you crazy going to America? And you're like 1%, not even 1% of the world is a violent criminal. Yeah. Right. And most criminals are, and if whatever the percentage of whatever the population is that's actually what is crime, most is going to be petty. Right. So you really 99% of the people are pretty good people. Yeah. So you're going to not go somewhere because you're worried about that 1%. It's the same, I think, with the trust, and and Sean makes that great. It was actually on our podcast just one out. It's trust is given, and it can be lost, right? But trust, especially from a leader, trust is given. And when you give trust, I think you earn respect. So it kind of goes on both sides of that coin that you just talked about, which is I think a wonderful, wonderful way to look at the world. And it's a lot easier. It's so much easier on your soul to just give trust instead of. And then when it's like hire, it's like the opposite, hire slow, fire quick, give trust away fast. And, if it goes, it goes. And then, you got the wrong person anyway, and then be done with it. Move on. Right. Yeah. So I think that's a great thing. So I want to segue in. First, I got to reading this ad from our great sponsors, Murray Insurance. This episode, every episode for the last 2 years of the Tango One podcast has been sponsored by our good OGs from Kingsville, Ian and Kara Murray. They are Ontario's #1 ranked Desjardins insurance agency by their clients. Like I said, they're owned by our OGs, Ian and Kara, and they pride themselves on many of the high standards that the Garage Gym members have come to expect. They are dedicated to our community. They just raised a ton of money for the food bank in Kingsville. Super proud of them. They're a one-stop shop for everything to protect you, your family, and your assets. The best policies in the industry. So you can give them a call. You can find them on Instagram at Team Murray Insurance. Let them know you heard them on the podcast. So, man, there's a little corporate for you there.
Yeah, so, like it.
So you go from, your website says combat to corporate. That's a great, a great segue. And you're somewhere in between too, right? Like you went from combat to kind of out to the workforce, right? And then really start to lean back. It's funny how it comes full circle when you lean back into what your passion was.
Yeah, I like that. like went all full circle to my kind of passion. But yeah. So I left the army, and then, became a public servant. So I was in the, provincial and federal levels as an executive in the public service, and I did that for 4 or 5 years, and it was a great experience, but it just wasn't really aligned. That's not right. So I guess I just didn't feel like I could be the leader I wanted to be. And I also felt like I had so many stories and so many failures and so many experiences that I wanted to give back. Like I wanted to try to, get this message out there, about how there's a different way of leading, And so it kind of went full circle, which is kind of why I created Impact Leadership. And, the last couple of years has taught us a lot of lessons. And I think it taught me to look in the mirror and really redefine what success was for me, because the definition of success that I'd certainly internalized was one of like, your job title, your salary, all that sort of stuff. And I realized obviously that's not the case. I mean, we kind of know that now, but I'd internalized that, and subconsciously I think was following that path. So I redefined what success was for me, and it's really giving back, and it's really trying to inspire and help other leaders, through really sharing my own stories and sharing my own failures mainly.
Again, when you say executive with public service, I just picture you like passing out memos. I don't know you very well, but I just can't see you doing that. So this is wonderful. So with Impact Coaching, like just tell me a little bit about it. Like, what do you do? How do you, how does it operate? What if I needed your help? What would be kind of like the methodology or the system that you might employ? Or run me through.
I mean, and it really depends what clients, what people I partner with kind of require. I mean, one of the flagship, I don't even use that word. One of the premium things we do, if you like, is kind of like the impact journey, which is, a kind of 3-month coaching engagement with myself. We start off like with an emotional intelligence assessment. And then we go through like, sort of coaching over a 3-month period to really help gain clarity of where the client's kind of stuck, etc. And at the same time, we do leadership development. So I have a whole bunch of online leadership development modules that I've created, where I've recorded my own stories, my own experiences, my own practical leadership examples. I tie them into theory, etc. And so it's almost like a leadership development course online that people follow at the same time being coached by me. And I find that's, a really kind of, it really hits home that course, because it really combines kind of coaching with leadership development. And then I also take that leadership development, those modules and those courses, and I run cohorts through them. We do kind of weekly, bi-weekly webinars, check-ins, etc. And I also will run a bunch of workshops. So really, a lot of it depends on where people are, you know what I mean? And like what they want. So it can be sort of group work, it can be individual work. And also a lot of it depends on mindset. So if people ask me like, okay, who's your preferred client or what industry? And for me, leadership is leadership. Like there's no such thing. Like it really triggers me. That's a bit extreme, but I don't agree in like, leadership in healthcare or leadership in education, I think what they're talking about in those environments is like management in education, and management is healthcare, and management in so and so. Because a lot of, you can do a lot of educational courses or degrees in that. Because leadership is leadership because you're leading humans and you're leading people with emotions. So I don't care if you're in the healthcare profession, if you're in a different technical profession, I don't really care. You're leading people. So leadership is just simply that. So I like to partner with people who are open-minded enough to know that they don't know everything. And I'm a big believer in lifelong learning. And I don't believe any of us ever receive the certificate that says that's it, you've passed the course, you're now a leader. In fact, the people I won't work with are folks who are like, well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, your leadership development courses, I don't really need to dig into them. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing my organization can learn from that, And I'm like, listen, like I learn so much every day by seeing, 18-year-old, 19-year-old people, students of mine going through these courses as much as I do learning from watching, a senior executive go through these. Like we all have something to learn. So I think that open and growth mindset is definitely, important.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to be able to work with somebody unless they know that the problem is them, like you're the problem. I mean, it's true. Like it's like everything that happens in this place it's on me. It's me. It starts with me. It ends with me. Right. And
I love that.
And it like, so when I like start working with somebody, it's like, well, your life is kind of a fucking mess, right? Like you're not taking care of yourself. You're not like worrying about your own health. Look at you're like drinking a Red Bull and throwing it on the passenger seat as you get out, on the floor, to get out to come in here and lead these people. Like you woke up late, you probably chased the kids around yelling and screaming. Like you got to get all those things in control so that when you come in, the first presence is is just your presence, and I just think that people really want to ignore that too much. And I think that's something we need to all point out as leaders. And like when I'm on edge in here and I'm like maybe a little bit too snappy or too pushy with some people, it's not because of them, it's because of me. It's because maybe I was ignoring my health, or I read in your bio, and we talked about it the other day, one of the shitty parts of the paramilitary, experience is that we all tend to do a lot of our debriefs over drinks. And I'm not against having a drink, but it's, when I drink too much, those are the things that happen to me. I'm more edgy. I'm more, emotional. I don't sleep as well. Like, fuck, man, you got to take care of all of those things if you want to take care of the ship, right? I love that.
It's, and I love that. And it takes a courageous leader, a courageous coach to hold people capable like that, and to actually put it back on them and say, what's your role in this play? You know what I mean? Like, if life's just a big play, like, honestly, like, let's, and we all have a role in it. We're all playing, you know what I mean? And so often people will just talk about everything that's going on around them. And I think the bravest question you can ask them is, okay, what's your part in this? You know what I mean? And it's a humbling, experience to start asking yourself that. And like you just said, is like, when we look at really how we're contributing to everything around us, we realize that, there's so much actually we can control,
Yeah, man. I think that's a great place for us to kind of end that thing. Talking to you is a joy, man. I love this. This is not going to be our last talk on the podcast. Is just such an excuse to sit down and talk to somebody for an hour.
I love that.
I feel like it'd be weird if I just called you and we talked for an hour, but we did the other day anyways. But so I think this is outstanding. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you for Impact Coaching, sorry, I butchered the name there, Impact Leadership Coaching and Development, what would they do?
Yeah, they can, I'm online, I'm on LinkedIn, but the website is impactleadershipteam.com. Email's phil@impactleadershipteam.com. I think I'm Instagram, but I'm very bad at it. But anyway, it's impact.leadership. Yeah, and I think if you just look up Phil Jewell on LinkedIn and Impact Leadership, you'll pretty much find me. And that whole 6 degrees of separation, I think if you look hard enough this day and age, you can pretty much find anyone you want.
For sure. I know, especially I've had some weird things happen since leaving policing, but we'll leave that for another whole other show. So everybody, this podcast and every podcast sponsored by HQ Nutrition and 10,000 Clothing. Phil, actually 10,000 Clothing. You need to check these guys out.
I think I've heard it. I think I might have heard of these folks.
Tango 15. Use my code. But yeah, tactical pants, like gear, performance gear, all the stuff that you like to do.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm going to check them out.
Like workout gear and tactical gear. It's the best, hands down. So Tango 15 on both those companies, guys, will get you what you're looking for. And as usual, thank you guys. I hope this one inspired you guys to do more and be more, take some action against weaknesses. And like we talked about, admit your weaknesses, because that's the best thing for me. That's the game changer for me. So thanks a lot, Phil.
Now's the time to do more and be more.